This is a recording of the Indianapolis Press Club's 1955 Gridiron Dinner and Show. The first voice that you will hear is that of the Roastmaster of the evening, Mayor Jack Scott of South Bend. He was introduced by Press Club President Jep Cadieux Jr. and Moose Krause, Athletic Director of the University of Notre Dame.
Welcome, gentlemen, to the annual Indianapolis Gridiron Dinner. This annual affair is sponsored by the Indianapolis Press Club at $15 a head as a fringe benefit for the American Newspaper Guild. In this part of the program, it's my duty to introduce the guests and with their introductions reflect on another year that just passed in the great political phenomenon of this hemisphere, which is Indiana, USA. The year just passed in Indiana was another great year, when once again we had a good look at the peculiar qualities that make Indiana peculiar. The same qualities that have made our native sons from Abraham Lincoln to Herb Schreiner want to return to this beautiful soil. The past year will be remembered for many things, some of them positive and some of them negative. For example, harmony was restored to both political parties, and now we have only 10 factions in each. This was the year that our legislature in august assembly passed two major pieces of legislation and defeated one. The two major pieces that they passed: first, they passed a bill establishing the salary of legislators. And the second major piece of legislation raised those salaries. And the major bill they defeated was one that protected the chastity of baby chickens. This was the year in Indiana that Doc Sherwood retired. The year that Time magazine came into our land and made us famous for the Angus bull. Black Angus calves, strawberry roans, Albert and Dillon and poor Jap Jones. In the field of art, great music was composed, and few Hoosier hearts fail to beat just a little faster when they hear that great melody sung by the Kentucky Asphalt Four entitled "I Wish I Was in Doxie." The sycamores and the tulips bloomed as usual, and so did the politicians. And it is to this latter blooming that we wish to address ourselves tonight. A spotlight on Governor George North Craig. Gentlemen, I think that you should be extraordinarily pleased that the governor is here tonight. He did not attend the South Bend Gridiron Dinner. One of the reasons is that the roads north of Indianapolis are impassable. Up there we live north of the spending line. And another reason is that the governor refuses to fly, because all of the pilots are veterans. But the governor is here tonight, and he's here for two good reasons. One is his natural warm affection for the working press. And the second reason is that the fish aren't biting in the White River. Governor Craig will make two appearances here tonight, one now, and then in the intermission he and Doxie Moore will wrestle two falls in the outer lobby. Governor Craig will be remembered as governor of Indiana for many achievements, but probably most of all he'll be known as the toll road governor. For those of you who are in Indianapolis, and most of you are from here, and might be worried about the toll road, as an old hand at it, I'd like to reassure you, and to tell you that the toll road is not a highway at all. It's a way of life. have the toll road going just north of South Bend and just north of Notre Dame. They're spending an awful lot of money up there. They paid Notre Dame so much for a couple of acres that they've changed the name of the Cardinal Newman Dormitory to the Albert J. Wedeking Memorial Hall. I should warn you that the toll road may cause you slight inconvenience, this north-south toll road, or they may have to move the Allison plant, tear down a few schools and churches, a few homes, but by golly, there'll be clean restrooms on that toll road. And all the attendants will be Republicans, and they'll all wear used American Legion uniforms. It's an honor for me tonight to present to you the distinguished governor of the state of Indiana, the Honorable George North Craig. Our next guest, the Honorable Homer E. Capehart, Senior Senator from Indiana. Will you stand, Senator? For the last 6 months, Senator Capehart has rendered distinguished service to the Republic by being absent from Washington most of the time. When they say he's the senior senator from Indiana, they mean he's in Indiana. Rumor has it that he may be drafted for re-election at the next state convention. He has been campaigning vigorously for the past few months. We were delighted to have him in South Bend. Hasn't been in Washington much. In fact, the last time he voted was for relief for the Navajos. And that was at the request of a constituent, Mr. Pulliam. A year ago, the senator captured headlines by his trip to Peru, Mexico, Valparaiso, and Brazil. And this year, he has spent his time capturing votes in Peru, Indiana, Mexico, Indiana, Valparaiso, Indiana, and Brazil, Indiana. Co-author of the famous Capehart-Jenner Ilk Manifesto, he is now friendly with both the governor and his fellow senator. In this impossible situation, Senator Capehart stands with the same firm flexibility that enabled him to parlay a jukebox into $1 million and permit him to live happily ever after in the halls of Congress. Our distinguished Senator Homer E. Capehart. The junior senator from Indiana, the Honorable William Ezra Jenner. The Indianapolis Press Club is very grateful that this very busy man could get here tonight. With the senator, it was a toss-up. He could either come here, or the Republican National Committee was willing to send him to the Straits of Formosa. For a year's study tour under a United Nations fellowship. The senator, and we're glad of it, chose to come to Indianapolis. And he comes to us directly from Shelbyville, Indiana, where he dropped off to investigate subversion in the Sunday schools. You are all familiar with Senator Jenner's brilliant background. He was a child prodigy, and at the age of 6, he was carrying the Chicago Tribune in Bedford. And the Chicago Tribune has been carrying him ever since. A deeply religious man, the senator nonetheless believes that the doxology should be replaced by the Bricker Amendment. He attended Indiana University with Governor Craig, and although they were both outstanding figures on the campus, they never even met. And since then, the relationship has grown steadily worse. A few weeks ago, we honored him here in Indianapolis, and now tonight we're very proud to welcome back our junior senator, the Honorable William E. Jenner. Alex Clark, Mayor of Indianapolis. Alex has enjoyed his term of mayor of Indianapolis so much that a few months ago he became a ghostwriter for the Indiana skip election law. As a retiring mayor, he can't run again. People have been speculating about his future, and it's uncertain, although it is rumored that with his currently demonstrated proficiency, the governor may have him take over one of the state parks. Alex is an impartial gentleman, and he was what we might call a neutral for Nolan. After Steve Nolan talked to Alex, Steve had the itch to run, and Dale Brown satisfied his itch by scratching him in the primary. This is cleanup week in Mayor Clark's city, and one club in town a few days ago celebrated this cleanup week by cleaning up $750,000 in a baseball pool. In spite of this, Alex Clark remains the serene, agreeable, fun-loving administrator that has made him so many friends in the past and will continue to do so in the future. My friend, the Honorable Alex Clark, Mayor of Indianapolis. Eugene Pulliam, newspaper publisher. This shy, silent, retiring juggernaut of judicious journalism is the only man in the room who has a caddy's license at Burning Tree Country Club. In his newspaper profession, he maintains a fair-minded, hands-off policy toward the editorial side and spends his waking hours checking the advertising lineage. Mr. Pulliam is a kingmaker. He is personally responsible for the promotion of Brennan of Notre Dame, Crow of Crispus Attucks, Craig of Meridian Street, Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier, and a new bartender at the Keys. Next year, Eugene Pulliam will have breakfast the morning of the Republican State Convention with next year's nominee. He'll do this even if he has to eat breakfast 10 times. One of the dominant figures in American journalism today, Eugene Pulliam. Tony Hullman, owner and operator of the Indianapolis Speedway. Tony? Tony runs the 500-mile race that has made this city famous. If there's anyone present who does not get glasses at Christmas time from Tony Hullman, see Harold Hanley and get his mailing list. Mr. Hullman has mixed baking soda, cigars, and beer together, and the mixture has turned out to be an awful lot of dough. His youngster roller skates to the track on 2 Jaguars. This year, there will be a number of innovations in the 500-mile race. For one thing, Senator Capehart will bring 20 South American ambassadors as his special guests from south of the border. This means that the mechanics in the pit will be dressed like bullfighters. And Dinah Shore will kiss the winner and dance the mambo at the same time. A friend of the press, a credit to his city and one of the nation's top sports promoters, Tony Hullman. Walter Leckrone, editor of the Indianapolis Times. Raised in the Scripps Howard tradition of unbiased reporting and scrupulous regard for accuracy, Mr. Leckrone, although representing a liberal institution, is nonetheless politically conservative himself. He is so conservative, as a matter of fact, that he regards the Chicago Tribune as left-wing and the Columbia Club as a hotbed of subversion. In things political, he stands not only to the right of center, but also to the right of Pat Mannion. He comes from the Buckeye State of Ohio, where his father, 92 years old, had an illustrious career as an editor and a minister. With this precedent for longevity, Indianapolis can look forward to being graced for many years to come with the person of this excellent Hoosier journalist, Walter Leckrone. Spotlight on Mr. Hilton U. Brown, one of the gracious figures of our evening here together tonight. Mr. Brown is 96 years old, and the chances are very good that he can take any one of you in a foot race down Meridian Street any time of the day or night. He's vice president of Indianapolis Newspapers. He came to that organization more than 70 years ago on a temporary basis, and as soon as he completes a reasonable probationary period, they plan to make the job permanent. A trustee of Butler University and one of Indiana's first citizens, Hilton U. Brown. At this point, I want to tell you that Jeb Cadieux gave me a number of telegrams that he had from dignitaries who couldn't be here. I'm not going to read them all because they're all filled with excuses and addressed primarily to the precinct committeemen in the audience. However, I would like to read this one. It's from City Councilman Paul Rozplowski in South Bend. It's addressed to Jeff Cadieux, and it reads this way: Dear Jeff, sorry I cannot attend the Gridiron Dinner. Tonight is my bowling night.
Hello, Josh boy. Early bowling tonight. Cock him on.
Would you take... Yes. Thanks a lot, Paul. You never tell about Rozplowski. Thank you, Lieutenant Peterson. At this particular point, we come to what we charitably refer to as the speaking portion of the program. To speak for the Democrats, Mr. Paul Butler, chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Mr. Butler, who is on my right, is from South Bend, and we're very proud of it. In fact, South Bend has many people named Paul who have made us famous. Paul Butler, Paul Huffman, Paul Rozplowski, the city councilman, and Paul Sludd, who is doing a murder rap at Michigan City. In fact, Sludd last week won the Hugh O'Brien Essay Award at the prison. He wrote an essay in 25 years or less why Michigan City is the best lifetime pen. I'd like to say that Paul Butler, gentlemen, is a greatly misunderstood man throughout the United States. In South Bend, we know him as a good neighbor, good citizen, kind and thoughtful person. In fact, just last week, when he was home, he stopped me on the street, put his arm around my shoulder, and with deep and obvious concern, he said to me, Jack, how is Mrs. Scott's health? Paul comes to us directly from a triumphant tour of the United States, during which time he was able to raise President Eisenhower's popularity in the Gallup poll by 3%. In fact, while Paul was in California, he took to wearing mint-flavored shoes. He was putting his foot in his mouth so much. Under Mr. Butler's administration of the Democratic Party, however, there have been some notable achievements. A few of the squirrels were removed from the White House lawn, and Paul was able to get several of the Democratic governors to stay over after the President's Conference and turn in their I Like Ike buttons. We in South Bend are proud of Paul Butler. A few weeks ago, we had a great nonpartisan testimonial dinner for him in South Bend, and the Republicans kicked in $1,000 to buy him a solid gold watch. It wasn't a complete watch, just the case, because next year we hope to give him the works. Brilliant organizer, devout family man, a credit to his community and state. Here he is to speak for the Democratic Party, Paul Butler of South Bend.
Mr. Roastmaster, distinguished Democrats, about to be extinguished Republican, and gentlemen, guests of the Indianapolis Press Club. The Roastmaster of the evening, I suppose in the words in which he introduced his congressman from South Bend, the 3rd District, my mayor, has done a great job. And I think as a citizen of South Bend, I should say that we're very proud of the job that his scriptwriters have done for him and the manner in which he's presented. I think that this fellow Paul Rosklatsky, if I pronounce it correctly, must be of that public relations firm up in South Bend that's handling Mayor Scott's account. Seriously, I do want to extend my congratulations to the Indianapolis Press Club and to Jep Cadu, Jr., the chairman and president, for this splendid dinner and what I imagine will be a very entertaining program. The Press Club of Indianapolis does a splendid job every year. Being from South Bend, John, I think you and I can see, inasmuch as this dinner comes after the annual dinner of the South Bend Press Club, just how much they copy from our Press Club program up there. But I do want to compliment the committee, particularly on the seating arrangements. You notice how they've kept these Republicans apart here tonight at the head table? There aren't many of us Democrats in the whole hall, but they've used us very expeditiously in trying to separate the very friendly factions of the Republican Party. I had the pleasure coming out today of meeting. I came from New York, Leonard Hall came from Washington, and we met in Cincinnati without prearrangement, and we came out on the plane together. And as we arrived at the airport, there was a television apparatus there that wanted us to say a few words about tonight's program and the affair, the Gridiron Dinner, so they could use it tomorrow. And Leonard Hall said that he just was happy to have this opportunity to get away from the Potomac fever and the confusion and the conflict and contradiction down there in Washington, get out to the serenity and the peace and quiet of Indiana. And you know, I couldn't help but think that maybe Leonard doesn't read the newspapers either. I've heard of another man in Washington who doesn't read the newspapers. And so I told Leonard about this little squabble that's been going on out here in Indiana, and I was afraid that maybe, unless he had some particular man to protect him, that he wouldn't have such a peaceful time. So you can see that that's why this giant from Notre Dame, who used to play tackle and used to play basketball and guard 5 men from getting near the basket, Moose Krause, is on the right-hand side of Leonard Hall tonight to protect him from within his own organization. Now, one thing that Leonard Hall doesn't have to worry about, and that is what to promise in 1956. Whoever the GOP nominate in their convention next year, their nominee can use the same promises that Ike used in 1952 because they're all just as good as new. Now, they may be slightly tarnished after 2 years of not having been mentioned, but I think if they just polish them up and shine them up a little bit, why, they'll trot them out next year once more. But it's probably a good thing that the Republicans didn't keep all those promises they made in 1952. If they did, I think the whole advertising industry of the United States would have to get busy thinking up new ones for 1956. Now, one of the problems that Mr. Hall and I have in common is with the press. Some days, Mr. Hall and I are getting at each other in words. Of course, we never get at each other physically, other than when we had that beautiful young girl between us tonight, Leonard. We were trying to make a pass, I don't know whether at each other or at the girl. But I wasn't aiming for you. I want you to know that. But in any event, when we're getting together, getting at each other with a few hot and heavy words, it seems that the press gives bigger headlines to Ike and Zelenkoff than they do to Leonard and me. Now, I claim what this country needs is a two-party press. But Leonard insists that what we need is, well, he says this, a two-party press isn't adequate. That's only enough to take care of the two Republican parties. What we really need is a three-party press. I feel real sorry for Leonard, I really do. I sometimes lose sleep worrying about Leonard in his dealings with the press, because all Leonard has on his side are the publishers. I think, in fact, the publishers were in charge of tonight's banquet again, because the Democrats have to speak first and the Republicans get the last word, as usually happens on these gridiron dinners. But there is one thing that Mr. Hall and I have in common, and that's our mutual admiration for each other. Leonard is a fine gentleman. It was only last Tuesday that I said publicly that I couldn't think of anyone that I would rather have mapping the strategy for the Republican Party for 1956 than Leonard Hall. And before he gets a chance to say it himself, I think he feels the same way about me. Now, there's just one other thing I wanted to mention, and then I'm going to let Leonard have his say. And that's one thing that Leonard and I share in common. Neither one of us gives a hoot whether Ike is going to be the Republican candidate in 1956. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for these 2 pills for Mrs. Scott. Next, Leonard Hall, chairman of the Republican National Committee. Mr. Hall, during his distinguished career, has been a judge, a statesman, a legislator, a brilliant public servant, and a great unifier. I am pleased to welcome him to this Republican oasis, which is Indiana. Now, gentlemen, let's welcome to Indiana the Honorable Leonard Hall, chairman of the Republican National Committee.
First, may I say this. Anytime this Roastmaster of yours wants to leave Indiana and go to some other state, we'll take him in New York. Governor, to senators, congressmen, and friends of Indiana, I'm happy to be here with you tonight. I came out on a plane, and as Paul said, we met at Cincinnati. There was some turbulence in the air over this city After being here for a few hours, I could understand why. Frankly, Paul was right. I did say at the airport that when I got Gene Pulliam's invitation to be here tonight, I thought it would be wonderful to get away from the bickering and squabbling in Washington and get out here to the peace and serenity of politics in Indiana. You know what? We're used to a lot of things in New York. We have 3 parties in New York. This is the only state in the country that I know of that has 4 parties, 2 Republican and 2 Democrat. And yet, with all of the squabbling going on out here, I talked to one of your old-timers at the airport, and I said, how are things? Why, he says, everything out here is normal and in status quo. And then I was met and taken to a cocktail party. I walked into the cocktail party, and after I was there a few minutes, somebody said, is Bill Jenner here? And another voice said, well, Bill Jenner isn't here. You haven't heard him, have you? And then tonight, did you notice that when Homer Capehart got up, the only man at the head table without a black tie? But we had a party in Washington some time ago where the requirement at the White House was a white tie. Homer was the only man who showed up at the White House with a black tie. But that black tie got headlines the next day. Let's look at the headlines tomorrow morning.